And there's other time where we were hanging out with this other guy, and this is a guy that we're not really friends with that much. I'm not going to say his name. He has kind of weird political views. And one day, this was like a couple years ago. This is before, the election, before all this stuff came out. So we were still hanging out. And he had just gotten single, or he was recently single. And so, we're all on Tinder. We're all swiping, whatever. And he comes up to us and says, "Hey, Ethan and Spencer, can I ask you something?"
Oh, no. I got kissed by my damn horse.
And he says, me and Spencer are like, "Sure, what's up, dude?" And he goes, how are you guys funny with girls? And me and Spencer are like, I don't know, we just are, I guess. Like, we're just talking. And he's like, oh, yeah, well...
Yeah, we're just hanging out.
No, like, I don't think people get my sense of humor. And I'm like, okay, what's your sense of humor? Now, this might be a little bit weird. Again, this is the one reason why we don't really hang out with this guy anymore.
Yeah, I remember this one.
Yeah, this is a good one. And so... Oh, he sends us a screenshot of a text message, and he's like, see, look, she didn't get it, so I'll read it. Or Spencer and I both read it, and it goes like, he's like, hey, what are you doing today? And she goes, oh, I'm going to temple, and he goes, oh, Jewish question mark?
No, doesn't he just go Jew lol or something like that?
Or like, he just goes like, I think it's okay.
Jew law, my favorite.
He
was great in that.
And she goes like, yeah, and he goes, LOL, and he's like, see what I'm talking about? And we're like,
that's not a joke.
That's anti-Semitism, my dude.
Yeah, that's just a weirdo, man.
I like that he asked first, Jew, just to make sure before you laugh.
You know what?
Yeah.
I have the screenshot somewhere,
and then a little while later, he texted us some screenshots of like a girl like ghosted him or whatever after a date, and he sent like fucking.
Oh really?
Okay, so I found it.
Did you send like swastika emotes or something?
Here it is. So
I sure did.
I don't know if this is even weird or I don't know if this is more innocent or weirder than what it is. So he goes, so she says, haha, nice, about to have Hanukkah. And he says, Jewish question mark?
And then
he just posed the Jewish question.
Oh my god!
And then he says, no, just wrote down a random holiday to celebrate. That's kind of funny, right? She's like, and he just goes, "Oh, gotcha." And then, I guess a day.
If you'd like, I do have a final solution.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. And then, okay, so then there's like a new date. So maybe like he didn't respond or she didn't respond, and she goes, "That's sarcasm, twat." And I'm like, that's kind of weird. And then he says a day later, "So you are Jewish." And she says,
"Let's get this
clear."
And
he goes, "Half, yeah." And he goes, "Oh, okay, now I gotcha." And then she goes, "What, racist?" And he goes, "LOL, no." And this is what he says to us about like, "Oh, girls don't get our humor." And I'm like, first off, I don't see how any of this is funny. I think she's kind of funny, humor. Kind of like a dirtbag, kind of like whatever with the whole twat thing, But it's like, God, what the fuck is this?
It would be funny if their whole interactions had been over text, and then the first time they call, he like sounds like he's charming, and then like they see each other in person, he's wearing like an SS uniform.
Oh no!
Okay, so I don't know what highlight this is because I have another story for you.
I don't know.
We'll just keep rolling.
Highlight this.
This is the neo-Nazi friends Ethan has.
People don't get improv humor. Also, Nazis like.
Yeah,
I don't know what highlight this is. So I have again, he doesn't. We don't
Nazis even
even if he did listen to this, Tate, you're problematic, bro. And
why do I keep punching my horse?
So I had to screenshot it with a different phone. I take a picture with a different phone because I couldn't. I don't want him to know I was screenshotting this Snapchat. So he has like a short jacket on, and I have it. I saved this for a reason. Okay, it says. He's doing the whole like nice hand thing, which again, white power thing, kind of edgy, whatever. He says, the caption goes, "Hitler Jugend jacket. I can now be a proper Hitler youth child," and then like the laughing, like crying, laughing emoji.
Ooh, big yikes.
And then the second picture is like showing the patch where the patch is clearly like ripped off. Right, there's nothing there, but there's like the dark mark, whatever, faded mark. He goes,
the dark
mark. Not sure if sad or glad the insignia is gone.
Jesus.
You remember that one guy who was on the I can't remember his name, but he was on the he was in our group at one point, and he posted a picture of himself in a Japanese tunic. I think it was like a Japanese army tunic.
Yeah. Oh,
And
Yeah, it's like an
Okay.
imperial.
I was there for that.
Now this is a totally now we can now this is enough to make this a separate highlight. Now it can be Nazi weird guys.
yeah. Well, that guy.
Yeah.
Dragged me for my baseball hat.
Yeah.
My dad hat.
Yeah, far right idiots we have known.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Or
So, yeah, the
maybe
guy-
not far right, maybe we're just more edgy. So for some context, this is a guy from Malaysia. He used to be a big, he's a big fan of the blog, or at least maybe back then. This is maybe a year or two ago, and he's a vintage collector. He had this weird thing about wearing jackets that were too small.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they weren't
sizes too small.
you wouldn't see a crazy X on this, but it was clearly just too small for this guy. And again, hey, when you look at the 1930s, jackets were shorter, jackets were tighter than they were in the 40s or whatever. So he clearly loved, vintage aesthetics, right? And so,
but even by that measure, his stuff was too tight.
yeah. So he had already kind of had really weird posts where he would say whenever I would post something about me at work or me hanging out with my friends, he was like, "Oh, I wish that I had friends here to dress up with me." Because everyone here is from the fucking slums. No one has there is no respect for occasion. Everyone, when all the trannies walk by, it makes me sad.
Oh my god!
And I was like,
Right.
"Good Lord, dude!" This guy is clearly being edgy, and a couple times we've called him out where he's like, "Oh well, I'm not in the West, so I don't have your sensibility."
Also, I'd like to add though that this is he walked around in morning dress in Malaysia, which we know San Diego morning dress guy, but Malaysia, yeah, there's one in every town, guys. But Malaysia morning dress, bro,
Yeah,
that's fucking insane.
yeah,
dude.
crazy.
You know what the climate's like in Malaysia?
Yeah, it's hot.
You're just sweating all the time.
This
Hot,
boy
it's
is pouring sweat.
No matter
Yeah.
what.
So the reason that his final kick of the group came at this point. So he posts a picture of himself wearing a Japanese school tunic, and he's wearing it with flannel pants or whatever. It's a normal thing. It could have been fine. In Animal Crossing they have Japanese school uniforms. That's cool, right? We all, MJ and I, we like watching anime. It's a fun thing, right? There's nothing wrong with wearing that. But here's his caption. He said on this outfit, he goes, not sure whether to be senpai or to go rape Nanking.
Jesus.
Ooh.
That's it. That's it. And a couple of people I saw this, maybe because time difference. I didn't see this till the next day, right? I mean,
Right.
we have more moderators in our Facebook group. Again, feel free to join in. Someone can put a link to that. Again, it's a fun group. It's a cool Discord light, if you will. But
Yeah.
but a couple of people already called him out hey, that's kind of messed up, dude. And again, I'm Chinese. All this is Chinese. There's a lot.
My grandmother was from Nanking originally.
Oh my
actually.
god. Yeah.
Yeah.
She would have been about 14 in 1930. Yeah,
Right.
So anyway.
And hey, I have had family in the Philippines. I don't know what I mean, we moved to America in the 70s, but I'm sure the Japanese occupation did some stuff there, right? So it's
Yep.
Oh, you think?
I mean, no, I mean
Yeah.
and that's his excuse. He was like, "Oh, well, first off, I'm just making a joke, bro. It's called dark humor. Look it up." And the second part is well, my family was killed by the Japanese, so I feel entitled I can make this joke. And it was crazy.
I have a dead relative too.
Yeah. It's
Join
not
the club. Yeah.
there's free speech absolutist, right? Left. That's a very left wing thing from what is it, the 20s or something, Spencer?
Well,
it's
that was a big thing during the middle of the the 20th century, where there was the blacklist going on and stuff like that. So I mean, this is kind of getting on a tangent, but yeah, that was a big big move.
So
free
I
speech
personally I don't have an issue with what he's that he said, but I mean not an issue. It's more he can say whatever the fuck he wants, but us all voicing our displeasure of it and kind of how insensitive it was, and just how out of touch. None of us have ever said anything like that in the group. Read the room, bro. And so he,
Right.
we were we were talking about it, and I was like, what, I'm gonna kick him, and a couple of people were like, oh well, you're the real fascist for kicking this guy, and I'm like, well, you can leave too, dude. It's still right.
Yeah, it's my group.
Yeah, it was absolutely insane that this kind of stuff happens. But again, if you listen to the whole Milsurp thing where we talk about how a lot of people who are into Milsurp or even the proprietors and creators of Milsurp have really weird political or just historical like passions or fetishizations.
Yeah, it's like we
surprised.
collect like military surplus, and so we run into a lot of reenactors and people who reenact like Germany, German World War II stuff. They all say it's like, oh, well, listen, we're just the German army. We're not being the Nazis. I still think it's weird. Like, I still think it's weird.
Yeah.
I mean, the Key and Peele sketch with the Confederate stuff is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But again, if you guys haven't seen the Milsurp episode, I'll tell you another anecdote that'll close this part out so we can get on to our topic for the evening. But an event called Ticket to the 20s, which is like at the Homestead House in somewhere in LA-ish, greater LA area. It's a very old historic house. They have like a very 1920s event there, summertime, kind of like their answer to the Jazz Age lawn party. And a guy there was like, hey boys, check it out. Like, he's a friend of mine, or at least an old friend of mine, and he showed me like under his lapel he'd be wearing like a Nazi pin,
Oof.
and that's fucking crazy. And at the time I was like, oh, that's funny, like Hail Hydra, like it's whatever. And this guy is German, and he already had
Hail Hydra's funny because it's not real.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it's not the same thing. It's like Star
G.I.
Wars
Joe.
Empire,
Yeah, exactly. But so at the time, like in 2012 or 13 or whatever, like, okay, this is kind of interesting or something, and he had like Nazi memorabilia, not a lot. He just had like like the pin, maybe like a postcard. Like, it wasn't like like a KKK hood. Like, at the time, it was just kind of like,
it was
okay,
an acceptable level of Nazi memorabilia.
oh,
It
yeah,
hadn't crossed the It's a fresh. It's all a matter of degrees,
it
guys.
It wasn't enough to like to
It was
be a big
tasteful.
like a red flag, at least at the time. Like, pre-Trump, pre-Jordan Peterson, pre all this kind of stuff. Okay.
Trump.
And yeah, Trump. But later on, as I was thinking about it, so this is fast forward to like when I went to the Cicada Club. Again, Cicada Club. This is not I said it too late. But I went to this. I went to this place. I went to this place, and a guy who was volunteering there. Again, not an official employee of this place. He was talking to the guy who had the Hitler Youth jacket. That I referred to earlier, and it was getting in. He was operating the ticket booth for the New Year's Eve Eve party, and he says something to this guy, "Hey man, you got your pin on?" And it's like, "Oh, I left it at home," and it didn't click in my head until like later on when I was like, "Wait a minute, under the pin under the lapel." Nazis. Yeah, I could not, and maybe for benefit of the doubt, they could be talking about maybe like a pro-Trump pin, because this is like 2015 or 2014, like around this time. So maybe it could be something else. Again, I'm not saying anything, but I'm just thinking of context clues here.
Yeah, the context clues here. They're asking
both
for
of these guys, they love like Rhodesian stuff, right? That's the thing. Which if you don't, come on now.
I mean, you can rationalize it however you want.
So the dog whistles were all around, okay? And
Oh, boy.
So, it's kind of like, this is
They
a
weren't
very-
dog whistles. This was a blowhorn.
It's like a megaphone, bro.
And these are the people that you meet when you're into vintage menswear in Southern California.
Yeah, and again, there's also
These are
one guy
the people.
who like one of our friend of ours is also like half Jewish, and he was telling us how another fellow Jewish guy who was very like fascistic and had like pro-Trump, very like Nazi memorabilia stuff. And I met that guy, and it's one of those things where like at the time like punks are very interesting, but like like when you get older, like, the real punk is like being conservative, and one of these guys was definitely
Is that
dumbest
Jason?
thing.
It's
the
not.
dumb shit.
It's
thing
not.
Okay.
people say.
yeah, and this guy had like,
Conservatism is not punk rock.
this guy had a
Fuck,
Puerto
okay.
Rican wife where like like some Puerto Ricans like Cuban, or maybe she was Cuban, but like they can have right-wing sympathies or whatever, so they kind of use that as like oh, well, I'm a person of color and I'm conservative kind of thing. So it's again, this is just interesting to see when we talk about menswear. This is more vintage, but I'm sure that this kind of stuff is prominent in contemporary vintage. Just maybe might be a little bit more under the surface because again when you're vintage, you have more overt vintage values. And again, a lot of these guys were on the side of like they all changed their profile picture to vintage values and vintage style and vintage values.
And yeah, right.
Yeah, what's wrong with having a traditional wife? Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna continue.
Well, like that guy MJ and I were giving the business to on Alpha, or like just saying you're misogynist. Like,
yeah, dude, I don't get it, man. It's like you're not even doing a good job. You're not even doing a good job of hiding it at this point. So.
Yeah, you'll never get into the nether regions of a woman with trying to protect them like that. And it's like, bro, I thought.
On that same note, I guess this is gonna be a fun, whatever. But so during the whole Me Too movement, there was an article about that came from, or an interview with who played
Roger Rabbit,
Superman,
Christopher Reeve. Oh no, the new one, the new one. Not Army Hammer.
There's some interesting stuff in the chat, guys.
It's not James
Yoshi.
Marsden.
Fucking hell! What the hell is his name?
He's from Mission Impossible.
What's his name? What?
He's
Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what we're thinking.
No, it's Henry Cavill.
That's funny. So Henry Cavill came out in an article saying like he's really, this is like a couple of years ago, he goes, I'm very scared to date in the Me Too, I don't want to be called out. And a lot of guys were like, yeah, this is what's wrong, because now when you go to the girl, she's like, say that you're raping her. And I was like,
yeah, she only says that if you're raping her.
Yeah, I jumped in. I'm like, guys, if you're scared of dating in this day and age, yeah, some stuff can be kind of like a weird red line. Sometimes that can be kind of weird, but in most cases, you'll know.
Pretty clear cut.
Pretty
yeah,
clear.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is very funny that there's a lot of people that it's like, oh man, you can't say anything without being accused of being racist. You can't make any moves without like being accused of like sexual harassment. It's like I'm a straight white guy, and I have like. honestly cannot think of a time that someone has called me out for like a racist comment because I don't generally make them.
Right.
That's
how he lived his life.
Yeah. And so I was coming and
living his best life.
The reason why I bring this up is those other guys I just talked about jumped in the chat saying, "Yeah, man, this is why you should date a conservative girl because then nothing that's gonna be on the table." And always whenever people say that, I'm always like, "What liberal girl broke your heart?" Like, and so I was talking to them like,
some e-girl broke his heart.
I was all like, I said, "How's that working out for you?"
Nice.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, talking to girls." I'm like, "Cool." And, it's like, yeah, they're better than liberal girls who will just cheat on you and cuck you. And I'm like, first off,
it sounds very personal.
If you don't tell them that if you have no issue, let me rephrase. If you want a serious relationship, you're not into if you're into dating exclusively cuck, dating exclusively right off the bat, then you should tell a girl that, right? So, and there's lots of girls out there, who, don't talk to multiple people at once, who don't, who don't date casually, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But like, if you don't make that clear, and then she sees someone else, and then you feel cucked, you technically got yourself cucked because you weren't
cucked yourself.
You weren't assertive enough. It's like, if you want to talk about the market, dude, this is the way the market's going, bro. You got to adjust, right? And it's like these guys are fucking crazy. That they're all about being manly, but they will never say, "Hey, girl, I want to be serious right away."
Because
that's the manliest thing you could say, by the way.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
All they do is they think that they're entitled to a woman who will, do exactly what they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
These guys have Tommy Lauren posters in their bedroom.
Oh my god!
Yeah, and they jack off secretly.
Whatever happened to her?
Who's that girl who wore an AR-15 to a graduation?
Oh, Caitlin Bennett.
Caitlin
Bennett.
Yeah.
The Kent State
She also
girl.
pooped her pants at us.
Yeah, that's the other pin-up.
Of course she did.
At a party.
I love that there's always a butt.
This guy who had the Nazi youth jacket and also the Jewish thing. Again, I'm done on this guy, but he texted us one time and he's like, "Guy, this girl wants to hook up with me. What do I do?" And I'm like, "Do you want to hook up with her?" He goes, "No." I'm like, "Then tell her that."
Crazy.
If she do something you don't want to do, you shouldn't date her. It makes me feel sorry because these guys. I'm sure like this plays with toxic masculinity, where like you feel like when there's a sexual thing, you should take it, right? Like that's kind of like a guy.
It's drilled into your head.
And it's sad that these people don't see, like, you know, you guys can say no, right? Like there's nothing wrong. Again, there's nothing wrong with being celibate. There's nothing wrong with being a Christian, but voice it out. Be vocal. You know, don't be vocal and shame people, but just say, hey, I'm not into it.
I also want to. I also think
don't
it's.
spray it.
I also just I want to point out that this guy's specific brand of right wing is like maybe the worst one because he was
Maybe
just like he's into like far right traditional American like Protestantism, which is
he did say like I hate brutalist art, which is also a dog whistle.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
No, I mean he's just
Right.
he's just like a weird like trad guy. It's we don't talk. We like run into him very rarely at like events,
I wonder if he's gonna
but,
watch this and be like, he's airing out our dirty laundry.
I don't think he does. I don't think he's gonna watch this because I don't think he listens to our podcast.